What if I told you there was a war so long, so powerful that it didn't just change countries, it ended an entire age of history? Imagine waking up one day and the world you know, how people fight, live, and rule just doesn't work anymore. That's exactly what happened. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how one war helped change the world forever. A long, long time ago, in the year 1337, two kings got into a serious argument. One king was from England, and the other was from France. Both of them believed they should rule France. Now, back then, kings arguing and fighting wasn't unusual. It happened all the time. So people thought, this will probably end soon. But it didn't. This war kept going and going and going. In fact, it lasted more than 100 years. That's why we now call it the 100 Years' War. Imagine that, a war so long that 3 generations of the same family could fight in it. A grandfather, his son, and his grandson, all part of the same war. People were born during this war, grew up during it, and died before it ended. And during all that time, something very big was happening, something people didn't notice at first. The world was changing. Back then, everyone believed knights were the strongest and most important fighters. They wore shiny armor, rode horses, and fought with swords. They were like superheroes of their time. People believed knights could not be beaten easily. But then came a moment that shocked everyone. There was a famous battle called the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. Thousands of French knights charged forward, ready to win. But instead of winning, they were defeated. By who? Not by other knights. By regular soldiers using longbows, big bows, and arrows. These soldiers stood at a distance and fired arrows into the charging knights. The arrows hit their armor, their horses, and caused chaos. The knights got stuck in mud, fell over, and couldn't move properly because of their heavy armor. And just like that, the idea that knights were unstoppable was broken. People realized something new. It wasn't just about being rich or noble anymore. It was about skill, planning, and smart fighting. That was a huge change. Before this war, armies were mostly made up of nobles, rich people who owned land. Fighting was seen as something only important people did. But during the 100 Years' War, kings needed more soldiers. The war was too long. Too many battles. Too many losses. So they started bringing in regular people. Farmers. Workers. Blacksmiths. Everyday people. And guess what? These everyday people started becoming very important in battles. They trained. They worked together. And they won. This changed how people saw power. You didn't have to be born into a rich family to be strong or useful in war. This idea helped create the modern armies we know today, armies made of regular people, not just nobles. But then something even more powerful came into the picture. Gunpowder. This was a huge turning point. Gunpowder led to the invention of cannons. Now imagine this, for hundreds of years, castles were the safest places in the world. They had thick stone walls, tall towers, and strong gates. They were built to keep enemies out. But cannons changed everything. Boom! With one blast, walls that had stood for years could crack. With a few more blasts, they could fall. Suddenly, castles weren't safe anymore. And if castles weren't safe, then the people who ruled from them, the lords and nobles, weren't safe either. This caused the whole system of feudalism to start breaking down. Feudalism was the system where kings gave land to lords, and lords controlled people living on that land. But now, with castles falling and armies changing, that system started to weaken. As the war continued, kings realized they needed to become stronger. They needed money to pay soldiers. They needed systems to collect taxes. They needed control over bigger areas. So instead of many small rulers controlling different lands, power started to move toward one central king. This is how modern countries began to form. Countries with one strong government, one leader, and organized systems. France became more united. England, even though it lost land in France, also began to change and grow stronger in new ways. Another big change was happening too, but this one was inside people's minds. Before the war, most people didn't think of themselves as part of a country. They thought of themselves as part of a village or loyal to a local lord. But during the war, something changed. When people fought for so long against another group, they started to feel connected to others on their side. People in France began to think, "We are French." People in England began to think, "We are English." They shared language, culture, and a common enemy. This feeling is called national identity. And it grew stronger during this war. Now let's talk about one of the most famous people from this time, Joan of Arc. She was just a teenage girl. Not a knight. Not a queen. Not from a rich family. But she believed she had a mission to help France win the war. At first, people didn't take her seriously. But then she started leading troops. And something amazing happened. The soldiers became more confident. They fought harder. And they started winning important battles. Joan of Arc became a symbol of hope. She showed that courage and belief could come from anyone, even a young girl. Sadly, she was later captured and put on trial. She was declared guilty and executed. But her story didn't end there. People remembered her bravery. She became a hero. And her impact helped change the course of the war. Finally, after more than 100 years, the war came to an end in 1453. England lost most of its land in France. The fighting stopped. But Europe was completely different now. Knights were no longer the most powerful fighters. Castles were no longer unbeatable. Kings were stronger and more organized. Armies were made of regular people. Countries were beginning to form. And people started thinking of themselves as part of a nation. This war didn't just end. It changed everything. It helped move the world out of the Middle Ages, a time of castles, knights, and feudal systems, and into a new period of growth, learning, and discovery. This new time would soon lead to the Renaissance, where art, science, and ideas began to grow in exciting ways. So here's the big idea: the 100 Years' War didn't just decide who won or lost, it helped reshape the entire world. It changed how wars were fought, how countries were built, and how people saw themselves. And the effects of that change are still with us today. If you enjoyed this story, you're going to love what comes next, because after this war, the world entered one of the most exciting times in history. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next video.